Today on Inquirer, U.S. expresses support for the Philippines amid the swarming of Chinese vessels in Philippine territory. Former TV host and reporter Daphne Oseña-Paez named as new Malacañang press briefer. The Philippine National Police assures the public Oplan Tokhang won't be abused if revived. And good news for frequent flyers. Civil Aeronautics Board projects cheaper airfare in January 2023. Good evening. The United States has expressed support for the Philippines amid the swarming of Chinese vessels in Philippine territory. To tell us more, here's Denisa Fernandez with the details. Denisa.
Yes, Neil, the Philippines received support from the United States or US amid the swarming of Chinese vessels in the Philippine territory. The Department of National Defense earlier expressed concern on the surge of Chinese vessels at the Iroquois Reef and Sabina Shoal in the West Philippine Sea. The U.S. supported the Philippines' continued calls upon People's Republic of China or PRC to respect the international law of the sea in the South China Sea, as reflected in the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea and its legal obligations pursuant to the 2016 arbitral ruling. According to U.S. Department of State spokesperson Ned Price, and we quote, the reported escalating swarms of PRC vessels in the vicinity of Iroquois Reef and Sabina Shoal in the Spratly Islands interfere with the livelihoods of Philippine fishing communities and also reflect continuing disregard for other South China Sea claimants and states lawfully operating in the region. End quote. Meanwhile, for Senator Francis Tolentino, diplomatic pressure and the increased presence of the country's Coast Guard could help fend off the Chinese vessels swarming Sabina Shoal. In an interview on ANC's Head Start, Tolentino added that the presence of the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources or BFAR for purposes of research in the area could also help. Filipino fisherfolk, on the other hand, should have additional bigger fishing boats that could last for several weeks without a resupply of gasoline to balance the presence of Chinese vessels in the area, the senator asserted. Last week, Tolentino delivered a privileged speech in the Senate about the situation in the South China Sea. He highlighted the incident in which the China Coast Guard allegedly forcefully retrieved Chinese rocket debris from Filipino fishers inside the Philippines' jurisdiction in November. China, however, disputed and claimed that a friendly consultation took place. Following the incidents, the U.S. expressed solidarity with its ally, the Philippines. For Tolentino, several measures could be done following the incident, such as beefing up the country's resources within Kalayaan Islands, involvement of the Department of Agriculture and BFAR, and building more lighthouses. The senator likewise reiterated his recommendation to broadcast news and Filipino music in the West Philippine Sea to raise awareness that the area is a territory of the Philippines. Several senators have also condemned China's alleged bullying of Filipino fisherfolk in the West Philippine Sea.
Denisa, this has been a long-standing issue faced by the Philippine government, even during the previous administrations. The response usually is to file a diplomatic protest against China. So I'm just curious, how many have we filed so far under the Marcos administration?
Neil, based on latest data from the Department of Foreign Affairs or DFA, there are 193 diplomatic protests filed through note verbals so far this year. Of the number, 65 protests were lodged under the Marcos administration.
Denisa, another question here is President Marcos, despite these diplomatic protests filed by his administration, he's been very vocal about staying friendly with China and other allied countries by the Philippines. So how is he planning to balance that relationship with China and that want to stay friendly with China with the need to protect what is ours?
Yes, Neil. Actually, Malacañang was asked for a reaction on the reported swarming incident. However, the palace refused to comment on the issue. But President Marcos, during the 17th East Asia Summit last month, said that the South China Sea can be a nexus of vibrant economic engagements and interactions if countries will cooperate to ensure that the contested territory remains a sea of peace, security, stability, and prosperity.
Okay, thanks, Denisa. That's Denisa Fernandez reporting live. Television host and former reporter Daphne Oseña-Paez is the new Malacañang press briefer. Office of the Press Secretary, Officer in Charge Cheloy Garafil made the announcement today, saying Oseña-Paez will be the one to deliver news and information about the activities of President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. For her part, Paez said in the briefing that she will, quote, regularly be the source of updates from the palace. According to the OPS, Paez was a former reporter who covered Malacañang and was a goodwill ambassador of UNICEF. When asked if her role was the same as the presidential spokesperson's, Paez said that she will support the OPS for now, as President Marcos earlier said he would rather face the media himself. Paez said that her role as the Malacañang press briefer would be to amplify and to communicate the message of President Marcos, the cabinet, and the government. She will hold the briefings every Tuesday after cabinet meetings.
I'm very honored to be communicating the message and programs of this administration, of course, in an accurate and effective way, and I will do my best. My role here is to amplify and to communicate the message of President Marcos and the cabinet and the government, and you are my partners in this. I will be here to brief you every Tuesday regularly after cabinet meetings and to express and to represent whatever programs and news items that need to be amplified.
Days after the death of Communist Party of the Philippines founder Jose Maria Joma Sison, the National Democratic Front of the Philippines said that the founder died due to heart failure. In an online interview from Utrecht, the Netherlands NDFP National Council member Luis Halandoni discussed the cause of Sison's death was heart failure after almost 3 weeks of hospital treatment. Halandoni did not provide further details on Sison's death. Earlier, the CPP news outlet Ang Bayan announced that Sison passed away in a hospital in Utrecht on Friday, December 16 at 8:40 p.m. Philippine time. Sison has lived in self-exile in Europe ever since peace talks with the government bogged down in 1987. The Philippine National Police promises to not abuse Oplan Tokhang if ever the controversial campaign against illegal drugs is revived. PNP spokesperson Colonel Jean Fajardo neither confirmed nor denied the return of Oplan Tokhang, but acknowledged past police abuses in carrying out the anti-drug program of the government. Should Oplan Tokhang be revived, Fajardo noted the role of barangay drug abuse councils in checks and balances, saying they will be the ones to identify who will be subject to the PNP's house visitations. According to Fajardo, the PNP regularly assesses the successes of past anti-drug operations. She said, that the best practices of the past may be considered and revived if they are seen as effective, adding that the case of Oplan Tokhang was effective. That in the case of Oplan Tokhang, it was effective. Data from the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency showed that Duterte's drug war left around 6,000 people dead, but critics and human rights defenders said the figure is higher, possibly around 20,000. Revival of Oplan Tokhang during the Marcos Jr. administration was raised when Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa, a former PNP chief, recommended its restoration amid alleged return of brazen drug traffickers and the syndicates. Plane travel will become more widely available and affordable as the Civil Aeronautics Board said it projects a reduction in the fuel surcharges in January 2023. CAB Executive Director Carmelo Arcilla said that from level 8 in December, the fuel surcharge will go down to level 7 from January 1. Although the prices are volatile in the global market, Arcilla said he hopes the trend continues downward. He also said that the lower fuel surcharge would depend on the distance traveled, but he insisted that the difference would be significant. Under CAB Resolution number 25, which provides the fuel surcharge matrix, the level 7 rate ranges from 219 pesos to 739 pesos per one-way domestic flight, while the rate per one-way international flight ranges from 722 pesos and 71 centavos to 5,373 pesos and 69 centavos. The fuel surcharge matrix ranges from level 0 to 20. And these are the stories you need to know today. I'm Neil Mercado. It's 5 days before Christmas. Follow INQUIRER.net on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Reddit. For more stories, visit INQUIRER.net. Good evening.